Now, this whole SVB, Signature Bank, Credit Suisse thing, it's making me wonder. And let me know if you've been thinking about this as well. The question I have is this the price of capitalism? Let me explain. So this whole situation with banks collapsing, banks failing, this makes me think about the 2008 crash. Understandably, right? So if you're not familiar with the 2008 crash, it was basically the subprime mortgage crisis where mortgages were so available to people that didn't even have incomes, that everyone had a house. You get a house, you get a house. It was like Oprah. Even people that didn't have jobs. You might think about that today and be like, what? You have no income. How could you have a house? A house should be something that you're proud of, that you worked for, that you had the discipline for, that you had the credit score for. But back then in the early 2000s, after 9/11, when interest rates went down, it's like 1%, the Fed, the central bank, lowered interest rates so that the economy would keep moving, so that the economy wouldn't go to a standstill. And this sounds great, but what happened was mortgages became plentiful. Everybody gets a house, but people that didn't deserve houses got houses. So eventually, when interest rates had to inevitably go up, the real estate market actually went down. There were a bunch of big banks like Lehman Brothers that bet that the real estate market would continue to go up. And literally their entire portfolios were banking, no pun intended, on the real estate market going up. So when the real estate market goes down, what does that do? That means that you own a bunch of assets that have lost value. So if you own a bunch of assets and they're now worth less than what you bought them for, then you got some pretty terrible balance sheets on your hands, don't you? This is the equivalent of you as a single person being house rich and cash poor, because you have a lot of assets and houses, but you don't have any cash on hand. So let's say you had an emergency, you got a flat tire or something, and you need a new tire and you couldn't afford to pay for that new tire, but you have 10 houses. That's like the situation with Lehman Brothers. Similar to like in a game of Monopoly, if you have a bunch of houses on the board and you land on someone else's property at Baltic Avenue, and that's not your property, and you owe them money, but you can't afford to pay it. And this is the type of thing that causes bankruptcies, right? So Lehman Brothers, they went bankrupt because they were gambling on the market and they lost. And they lost in a big way because unlike a lot of other banks, they were not as diversified. They were completely banking on the real estate market continuing to go up. And in SVB's case, SVB was banking on interest rates not going up as high as they've gone up. So I mentioned the 2008 crisis, but what happened after the 2008 crisis? Occupy Wall Street. And what was that about? That movement was simply about banks getting bailed out. Lehman Brothers executives walked away with $2 billion. How does that even happen? So people were understandably upset. Think about it. You had the subprime mortgage crisis where 8 million people have now lost their homes. People lost all types of pensions because pensions were tied into these investments and these stocks were tied to the housing market and all types of mortgage-backed securities. So people have literally lost their entire life savings. But the big banks get bailed out. And not only do they get bailed out, but they become bigger. Because JP Morgan Chase gets a loan from the government. And that loan from the government is used to buy the failing companies. And then it kind of makes you think about the antitrust laws that we started back in the 1900s. Remember when we didn't want one company monopolizing? It makes you think about how almost useless those laws are. Because if a company is going to monopolize, it's going to monopolize. And there's really not much you can do about it because even if there are laws in place, they're going to find a way to do it. Trust me. The gambling that went on in the market back in 2008, it's still going on in the market today. It's just veiled. It's repackaged. It's repackaged to look like something else. So what does all this have to do with the original question? The original question is this the price of capitalism? Because even when you have these antitrust laws in place, the big boys are still going to find a way around it. Instead of the gambling that was going on in 2008, now it's just a different type of gambling. It's probably repackaged. It probably has something new. It makes you wonder, there's almost nothing you can do about it. Because we could try to hold the big banks accountable for it, but can you really hold JP Morgan Chase accountable? How? They're going to get bailed out because the government deems them as necessary. I mean, I like JP Morgan Chase. JP Morgan Chase has been really good to me. I have 3 Chase FI reserves. I have a Ritz-Carlton credit card. I have the Chase Southwest Priority card. I have the IHG card. I had a Bonvoy Balance card that I upgraded to the Ritz. I have a Chase United Club card. I have a Chase United Quest card. I have a lot of Chase products, as you can see, So I don't want anything bad to happen to them. But there are a lot of other people that don't want anything bad to happen to them either. Think about it. How many employees does JP Morgan Chase have? All those people, let's say Chase collapse, all those people lose their houses, lose a paycheck, all those people lose a lot of money in the process. So what makes a bank necessary to the government, to the financial health of an economy? I would venture to guess that the biggest bank in the United States is probably going to be necessary. That's just my guess. So do we just have to deal with the system as is because it's the best system that we have? I think that's the question. I want to hear what you have to say in the comment section to this question. Is this the price of capitalism? Is this the price that we just have to pay to basically let institutional investors get away with a lot of wrongdoing and then for the government to bail them out using taxpayer dollars or other institutional investors to bail them out? And then what happens with those bailouts? These big banks, JP Morgan Chase, they just get bigger because they just buy the competition during a recession like this. You know, Bank of America bought Merrill Lynch, right? I think it's worth discussing, and I look forward to hearing what you guys have to say in the comment section below. Like the video, comment the answer to that question though. Is this the price of capitalism? Love to hear your responses. If you want to hear my answer, subscribe to the video, hit the notification bell, and I'll drop that video next. All right, you get some sleep. Peace.